AITA for being the reason my younger siblings said no to being adopted by our stepmom. I'm 16M, the oldest of 4. My siblings are Kalia, 13F, Thea, 11F, and Dex, 10M. Our mom died 8 years ago. Kalia and I are the only ones who remember her, and I remember her more than Cal does. But we have always shared stories of our mom with Thea and Dex. I also have a bunch of photos and videos they've seen, and they do ask about her, including our dad sometimes. 2 years after mom died, my dad met my stepmom and married her pretty quickly, 7-ish months later. At the time they spoke about her adopting the 4 of us. I said no. There was some debate between them and they decided to hold off until she could adopt all 4 of us. She was still new to me, so I found it incredibly weird to have someone offer to adopt me 5 months after I met them, especially when she and my dad were both aware that I remembered mom. None of my siblings have ever called our stepmom mom. Thea and Dex call her by a nickname and Kalia calls her by her name like me. But my siblings consider her a parent while I consider her more my dad's wife. The adoption topic never really went away, and a couple of years ago I did some research and learned that adoption would alter my birth certificate and I would be issued with a new one if I agreed. My stepmom's name would replace my mom's name as my mother. I did a lot of research on the topic because I knew the issue would reach a boiling point eventually. I even got to web chat with a local lawyer who knew the details of that stuff. A couple of months ago my siblings asked me why I mentioned downsides to being adopted, and I told them stepmom's name would replace mom's on our birth certificates and I did not want her to replace mom on mine. I showed them what I found. Kalia understood and Thea and Dex got it when we put it into more kid-friendly terms. My dad and stepmom brought up the adoption again last week, and dad said it would be the last time or they would proceed with her adopting my siblings. I said my answer remained no and gave them a very detailed speech on why. My stepmom said I could always frame my original birth certificate if that would make it better and people would see it, but I would still be adopted and be her son. I said no. When they did go to my siblings they all said no and all said they didn't realize mom's name would be erased and they didn't want that. My dad and stepmom tried to coax them out of their no, but they all said they didn't want it, and Kalia said they only ever said yes because they felt like they should, not because they really wanted to be adopted. My dad was furious with me and said it was all my fault and I had made them change their minds. He said I robbed them of the security adoption would provide and effectively made sure they would never truly see our stepmom as a mom after such a big line in the sand was drawn. AITA? AITA for not staying home for the night with my daughter while my wife goes out with friends? Background: my wife rarely goes out with friends, 6 times per year, and has never been very social and prefers spending time with me. I am more social, but that has declined as we have focused on our family. We have a 2-year-old daughter, and I spend time with the same 3 friends once a week for games night, sometimes in person, sometimes online. I have another 3 friends that I see only once every 2 months, also for games night. If I go out my wife will tend to our daughter. I often still help with dinner/bedtime, but sometimes leave earlier than this. Our daughter's bedtime is 7:30 p.m., and she often sleeps through the night without fuss, wakes up fussing maybe 5% of the time. I always offer for my wife to sleep in the next day, or something similar in exchange for me going out, so it's not a one-sided thing. Scenario: my wife made plans to spend an evening this weekend out with friends. She would be out from 6 p.m. until late. After she made those plans, I was invited to my friend's birthday thing with my second friend group. If I went I would be gone from 5 p.m. until late. The last time I saw them was exactly 1 month ago. I brought this plan up with my wife as I wanted to make arrangements for a family member to take our daughter for the evening. She was irritated by this and argued that I should stay home. I have since spoken with a family member who is happy to take our daughter at 5 p.m. and have her stay the night, and I have communicated this to my wife. I made it clear that this will not affect her plans at all. I will be responsible for the drop-off and pickup of our daughter, and will not ask anything of my wife because I understand that it is rare for her to have a night out like this, and so I don't want her to change her plans at all. She still thinks that I should stay home. Her arguments. She says that since she always covers for me I should also cover for her. She doesn't want to ask this family member to have our daughter for the night because she thinks we ask too much of them. My arguments. I am covering for her as she does not have to change her plans and doesn't have to do anything for our daughter. This family member loves watching our daughter, and my wife is often quick to agree to leave our daughter there for sleepovers plenty of other evenings out of convenience, e.g., we will be there for dinner and put our daughter to sleep there so we can visit longer, then we will leave her there for the night, so I don't see why this time it's too much to ask. I feel like she wants me to stay home as a form of punishment for going out more frequently than she would prefer. Punishment feels too strong of a word. I don't think there is any major resentment behind this or anything, I just don't know how else to describe the feeling. So, AITA is here to make plans to go out the same night. My wife also already had plans to go out, even though I am covering all arrangements for our daughter for the evening. Edit: not sure why everyone thinks I'm planning on getting drunk, but I would not be drinking if I went to the birthday. AITA for taking my sister to court and telling people because she sold my memorabilia. Context: I am 25, am from a very rich family, but my parents were absent during my childhood. I have 3 siblings, Mike, M22, Liz, F20, and Jane, F18. By the time my siblings came, my parents had noticed that they weren't caring for me as they should, so they showed my siblings more love, but Jane was always the golden child. Most of my childhood was raised by my grandpa. I'm aware that I come from an extremely privileged lifestyle, being showered in money and connections, but I've always felt empty when it came to family, except my grandpa. While he still doted on my siblings, it was obvious he favored me. To the extent that when he passed earlier this year, he left me a grand inheritance. Among it were some memorabilia of times I had with him. Sports events, shows, musicals, cruises, signatures, gear. Stuff if sold would go into the thousands. Monetary value aside, the memories I had with my grandpa were priceless. When his will was read, I think the parents knew why I was given such a larger share compared to my siblings. My relationship with them had gotten better as we cared for my grandpa in his last years, and they did try to care more. But my siblings were argumentative, especially Jane. Jane is a hypocritical person. While in her social circles, she championed equality, she was the most spoilt at home and demanded her share of everything. While Mike and Liz grudgingly accepted the inheritance share, Jane yelled, screamed, and threw things, all but demanding that my inheritance be given to her. She even accused me of being a bastard, which was enough to get my parents to for once shut her down. Fast forward to last month, when I visited the family house, I noticed a lot of missing memorabilia. I thought perhaps they were being stored away but then found out that Jane had taken them with some of her friends. My parents were surprised I didn't know, as according to Jane, I had agreed to sell them to charity. I didn't say a word more. I contacted my lawyer and told them to charge Jane for larceny and I had the news spread. Naturally, Jane was extremely taken aback. Last week, my family called an intervention meeting. My parents had by now learned that I never agreed to sell, but they still wanted me to drop the charges and deal with it internally. Jane of course was hysterical as this kind of drama could easily displace her in her social circles, especially as her friends were under the same impression that I had donated it. Frankly, I couldn't care less. I have little empathy for my siblings, and I know my parents are trying, but they still side with Jane more. I wrote them off and said that the only way I would drop the charge was if I got my memorabilia back, the actual items, and not the monetary value. My friends, whose opinions I do value, think I may be going too far as to charge my own family, and that it's quite an asshole move to spread around the fact that Jane had stolen from me, as the downfall of my family socially could be extremely negative. But I think I'm not the asshole, hence why I'm here. AITA?
AITA for telling my niece she'll have to move out if she's not my nanny anymore? I'm a single mom to 2 kids, 8 and 6. I work as a nurse. 3 days a week, I work 12-hour shifts, 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. After my husband passed, I needed a nanny to tend to my kids from the time they got off school, 3 p.m. onwards. I decided a live-in was the best choice. I have 1 guest bedroom. I live right near a university. Around this time, my niece had just gotten accepted. She wanted to save cost on dorms and offered to watch my kids those 3 days if she could live there rent-free. I agreed and said I'd also pay her $22 per hour, a competitive rate for our area. She's done with her classes by 1, so it works out. She fixes them dinner and puts them to bed. Then she's free to do whatever. But of course, I pay her from 3 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. It worked for 2 years. My niece never had any complaints. Now, however, my niece is getting a paid internship related to her major that starts in January. She wouldn't be available to watch my kids. I congratulated her and said I could help her look into student housing or an apartment. We have 3 months to do this. She was confused. I said since I would need a live-in and only have 1 guest room, she would have to move out. My niece got upset and said this isn't fair, she won't be able to save any money if she gets a dorm or an apartment, she could afford to live on her own, but wouldn't have much savings. I pointed out that this would work best for me as I had to put my kids in aftercare the other 2 days I work, I get off around 5, and the nanny could just pick them up from school versus them having to stay there so long. My niece argued that the nanny could leave at the end of her shift, but after speaking to some nannies, they understandably don't want to drive home so late. Plus, I'm fine with the nanny and my niece sleeping after the kids do. So, there's no sense in them sleeping than waking up and driving so drowsy. Even I feel nervous driving home so late, especially after my long shift. My sister-in-law, her mom, feels this is unfair to my niece, but she moved in under the condition that she'd work as a nanny. My sister-in-law and brother live 3 hours away, so my niece couldn't commute if she moved back in with them. They feel I should try to find a nanny who'd be willing to drive home at 12:30 a.m. It'd take me a half-hour minimum to get home, but all nannies I've spoken to have said no or expressed concern about their safety driving so late. Am I the asshole? Edit to answer from FAQ, the internship is all semester long. My niece isn't interested in nannying at all going forward and will instead be pursuing internships. She has no desire to work after her internship is over for the day. She knew from the jump that I was only looking for a live-in specifically for childcare. I have also provided her written notice and am covering my ass legally. AITA for telling my parents that if they give my brother money, I will stop giving them money. My F32 brother, 35, is trash. He has multiple baby mamas and is a deadbeat. He also is the apple of my mom's eye. He can do no wrong and is just misunderstood. My parents are retired and on a fixed budget. I do well for myself and I help them out. I give them maybe $500 a month to help with groceries and bills. Every once in a while I will give them extra for an unexpected expense. No questions asked. My mom asked me for $2,000. I sent it to her. Strangely enough, I ran into my brother at a family wedding I had been told he could not afford to attend because it was a destination wedding. Weird. Funny story, he actually missed the wedding because he hooked up with some rando on an excursion and went to their resort. It was our cousin's wedding and my aunt was pissed. She had to make special arrangements to get him included in the trip since he only got the money last minute. She said my mom shouldn't have given him the money if he wasn't even going to show up. Then she shut up after she saw the look on my face. I enjoyed the wedding and had a great time. When I got home, I went to see my parents. I asked my mom why she had asked for the $2,000. She lied and said something about the house. I asked what. She couldn't say. I told her what my aunt said. I told her and my father that from now on I wanted receipts for any money I gave them. I said I have no problem helping them, but I will be damned if I work my ass off for her to give my money to my piece of shit brother. She started crying and my dad said that they weren't children and didn't answer me. I agreed and walked out. I didn't talk to them for 2 months. My aunt called me yesterday and told me that my parents were thinking of going to the food bank since they didn't have any money. I said I had given them $2,000 a couple of months ago and that was more than my family of 3 spent on food at that time. She said I knew damn well they had given my money to my brother. I told her that he should probably pay them back then. She said I was being a bitch. Am I the asshole? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.